The presentation that I'm covering here covers a sampling of various sections of our access management training that we give internally at WisDOT. It's not intended to be a complete comprehensive discussion of WisDOT standards regarding access management, but more of a general 101 level of what we do for access management at WisDOT. Start out with access management principles. Principles that we use are identified in the TRB Access Management Manual 2nd edition. We've incorporated these into our Facilities Development Manual. This is a comprehensive manual that covers nearly everything except maintenance. And we've essentially taken the design principles and standards principles, you're late, Mike, out of this manual and incorporated them into our FDM. We have done this with really no edit or addition. We haven't felt that we've needed to. We believe these serve our department very well, and we believe we're in conformance with best practices nationwide. Principles of access management, as are listed in the TRB manual, are listed here. They are also listed in our FDM. I will abbreviate Facilities Development Manual to FDM 1155. For those of you that are interested, at the end of this presentation, there's actually a link where you can review our FDM if you'd like to get a little bit more information on these facts. But you see a listing of the 10 principles here. Essentially, it deals with safety, of course, and roadway operation. And these are the considerations that we look for and what we take into account. We also have driveway design guidelines, and we list a number of resources on this slide available to WisDOT staff. Several sections listed here of the WisDOT FDM and Chapter 9 of the WisDOT Maintenance Manual are two sources that we use. And the origin of these standards are really with the TRB Access Manual. Location and spacing. We'll have a brief discussion on that. Access, location, and spacing, like I'd said before, the focus is safety. We want to reduce conflicts as listed in the slide above. Essentially, get cars in and out of traffic as quickly and as safely as possible. So reducing the conflicts, having proper offsets, proper spacing. I thought the gentleman that's here from Iowa State with the analysis of access density per mile versus traffic crashes that's a very interesting study. I actually asked him for a copy of it. And our spacing guidelines are based on trying to get towards at least the middle or the upper end of the range that he has in his study. So it was interesting to see that. Sight distance and vision corner factors. Access spacing and placement should provide adequate sight distance, obviously. Sight distance are three factors: stopping sight distance, passing and intersection sight distance. This gives us our corner clearance for minimum location of a driveway to an intersection, and also dimensions for vision triangles. Intersection sight distance and stopping sight distance are important considerations. We measure them at every access point along the road. Stopping sight distance is one of the 10 FHWA controlling criteria for roadways with greater than 45 mile-an-hour design speed. So you've got to update your training, Bob. It's no longer 13 controlling criteria. Stopping sight distance, defined here. It's essentially the minimum length of roadway needed to stop the design vehicle. And the technical definition in here, like I mentioned before, stopping sight and intersection sight distance need to be checked at every driveway to ensure that not only mainline traveling vehicles can see an oncoming vehicle from a driveway, or an entering vehicle, I should really say, but also that the entering vehicle can see vehicles in the traffic stream already before they enter. And this is a diagram from our Well, actually, this is a diagram from our FDM section 11.10.5. Every access point or driveway or intersection needs to have good sight distance. FDM states that a vision corner is defined as either the clear sight window for intersection sight distance if no vision triangle is used, or the combination of the clear sight window for ISD and the clear sight window for the vision triangle as shown in figure 5.1. Access spacing, I'd mentioned it a little bit before. The objective of appropriate access spacing is safety. Spacing is designed to reduce crash potential. The less conflict points that we have, the more chance we have that we can reduce crashes and severity, of course. Sight distance is a primary control criteria for the safe locating and design of access points, and spacing factors for consideration are listed in the slide. Jump around a little bit here because I'm taking a sampling of the training that I modified for this presentation. So we're going to access spacing from interchange ramps. We have 1,000-foot minimum, but our desirable is a 1/4 mile. Well, I can't remember the exact reason that we chose this. It comes from the TRB manual, but the intent is to reduce any sort of queuing on the main line with conflict with traffic near the ramps of the interchange. Another consideration for driveway spacing from intersections. This topic is covered in the FDM section 11.25.2. The distance termed corner clearance, which I'd mentioned before, is a function of the signalized intersection, which is a combination of queue storage needs, turn lane lengths, and distance traveled during perception reaction time. So we want to keep the driveways out of that functional area of the intersection. WisDOT's FDM provides standards for corner clearance on non-state trunk roads. This slide discusses some possible options if it's not possible to provide minimum corner clearance. So that's some considerations that our designers would look at. Roundabouts and interchange ramps. Desirable distance of a 1/4 mile, 1,320 feet, between ramp terminal intersection and any adjacent intersection. Again, the minimum distance is 1,000 feet. Less distance can be allowed if justified by traffic impact analysis. And we'll get into this a little bit more further on in the presentation. I'll come back to it. But this slide shows roundabouts at the 9th Street interchange and also at Witzel Avenue in the Oshkosh area. You can see here on 9th that the roundabouts for the frontage roads are probably much closer than 1,000 feet, and that's a factor of vehicular speeds on the main line and the side road and context to the facility there. This particular example is in Green Bay area, and it's a similar one to what I showed you before. Here we have a driveway located closer than what would normally be desirable. This is at Shawano Avenue and Taylor Street in the Green Bay area. Shawano Avenue is a state trunk highway on our state trunk network. This project was part of the I-41 improvements within the city of Green Bay and village of Howard. The approach speeds along the legs vary from 30 to 40 miles an hour, and the driveway shown by the yellow area is about 75 feet from the roundabout itself. A traffic impact analysis was performed, and the spill distance, I believe it's referred to as, did not back up to the driveway. It was determined from modeling that the driveway would operate well and not obstruct flow either approaching or on the roundabout itself, so the driveway was allowed to stay. Roundabout and corner clearance due to shorter functional area, low speed, and less queuing. Corner clearance may be reduced. You've seen an example in the previous slide. In some cases, based on driveway volume, Q spillback, that was a term that I was looking for before, from the roundabout opening, across the driveway opening, and the sight distance between roundabout and driveway users. In that previous case, it met all these criteria, and actual traffic modeling did determine that it would function safely. Rural access spacing guidelines. This is table 5.1 in our FDM in section 1155. This shows the spacings required for various types of intersections depending on roadway type. It ranges from at the low end about 500 feet up to about 5 miles depending on roadway type. Generally speaking, the distances in this table are based on a 55 mile an hour design speed. So when we do consider exceptions, we take that into consideration as well. But this is where we start. I think generally, at least right now, most of our new driveways and new designs would follow that table pretty closely. Urban access spacing. Urban areas are unique. Other controls such as existing development, street spacing, and usually require varying degrees of access. Urban access spacing is described also in 1155 of our FDM. WisDOT does not have specific urban standards. We only have standards for rural areas, but we base spacing on the factors listed in this slide. So we try to take all those into consideration. If we have questions, we may actually do a traffic impact analysis. Urban access spacing, some tips for designers that we have, and also we list a table from the TRB manual, minimum distance to reduce potential of collisions caused by overlapping right turn maneuvers. Obviously, there's more tables than this in that, but we would refer back to the TRB manual in this situation since we do not have specific spacing guidelines for urban areas. Exceptions. As with everything else, there are always exceptions. You may run into them. Generally, exceptions in Wisconsin are granted for low volume driveways and low volume roadways typically. Agricultural field accesses, in this case, a utility access to a fiber optic hut. This one's actually on an interchange loop ramp, but volume of both the driveway in question and the mainline route of travel is something that we'll take into consideration for this. Driveway design related standards. The goal of driveway design guidelines is to get vehicles on and off the roadway as safely and efficiently as possible. I'm trying to speak too fast here, my apologies. This means providing adequate sight distance, driveway widths, driveway length, turn radii, and appropriate grades. Consideration of separate turn lanes or bypasses are also critical elements if you have larger volumes either on the main line or at the driveway itself. And in this situation, the bottom photo, you can see tire tracks on the shoulder. This is a situation where we may consider actually adding a bypass lane across from this access since traffic is already operating this way. Driveway design, it's important to provide adequate throat width and turn radii to allow motorists to comfortably enter and exit driveways. In Wisconsin, 35 feet is allowable for commercial driveway throat width, 24 for residential. Throat width and radii information is actually provided from Wisconsin Administrative Code, Chapter Trans 231, I believe. So sometimes Administrative Code does control. Design driveway grades. I love this photo here. It really hammers home the obvious. Avoid drainage onto the roadway. I think that's a fail. Maintain ADA required sidewalk grades. Looks like we might have got that. Ensure adequate grade and grade changes. Fail. Maximum. Nope. Fail. I'm not sure if this picture actually is true. It's been floating around the department for quite a while. Sorry?
It is true. All the guys
Well, I'd love to know how they paved that. What's that? Okay. I'd love to see how they got the Morrison Screed up that driveway. That's all I would have to say. But maybe a contractor I might be willing to hire. Yes. Bruce snuck something in on me and I didn't even realize it.
That was a change that just came about literally, I don't know, a week ago or 2 weeks ago that, we just didn't get caught in time for this. So.
Okay. Well, we'll correct it on the next one. Access related design options in the right of way. We can consider turn and bypass lanes like I'd mentioned before for larger volume driveways, passing lanes as well while it is a bypass lane. Medians and channelization, two-way left turn lanes or twiddles as they're colloquially called here in Wisconsin, and alternate access systems, front and rear service roads, frontage and backage roads, and then have the developer consider circulation, interior circulation, connectivity from a municipal road net or a local road net. Two-way left turn lanes have been used in Wisconsin relatively extensively. Some statistics on crashes, delay, and capacity there. They work well on an urban thoroughfare with a given traffic volume. I think eventually you reach traffic volumes where twiddles really don't work, so that it eventually comes to a retrofit situation. But if you have the right volumes, they work well. Medians and channelization, like I mentioned before, channelize traffic, reduce the conflict points. And Wisconsin likes to promote shared access where possible and appropriate. Also, we promote using frontage and backage roads where possible and appropriate. Bringing us to retrofit situations. When retrofitting a problem corridor, options are typically limited. Normally, WisDOT will look at turning movement restriction elimination, driveway consolidation, or elimination if possible. On more high volume routes, service roads may be considered, or other factors like were mentioned in the last group of slides. Some options to restrict turning movements are installation of temporary or permanent medians, use of J-turns. J-turns have been used in Wisconsin quite effectively. I know of about 3 areas where they've been used, so it's been on a limited basis. Loons have been considered, but I don't believe they've been used in Wisconsin yet, at least not by WisDOT. Flexible tubular markers are another way to define an actual raised median, and they've been used on state system and primarily, I think, on local system in Wisconsin. Key resources are the Wisconsin FDM, as I mentioned before, and Chapter 7 deals with exclusively access control. Chapter 11, design, we list the various subsections there, and there's a link to it. You can go to that link if you'd like to do more research on this. Is the highway maintenance manual also available at the Doing Business website, Bob?
It is.
Okay, so you can also look at our permitting things, SAMP plan, etc. at that location.
It is Chapter 9 of the Highway Maintenance Manual.
All right. Bringing us to the end of my presentation. So, don't know if
Do you
we
have any questions for Dave? Bill?
Please.
Oh, wait a minute. Hang on a minute.
Back to that photograph, I think it's your photograph, president of the business Your photograph's been compressed, I think, a little bit, so it looks steeper.
Okay.
But it is a steep one, and there are some, if you look at the original, it's still really up there. It makes you wonder how they make the transitions. But
Well, I kind of like the compressed version. It really brings it home what we're trying to talk about here, so.
Anybody in that neighborhood is restricted to driving Humvees, I believe.
Thank you. Where do you put farm accesses in? You got 24 for residential, 35 for commercial. We've
They
been
would be
having farm
commercial
accesses.
They would be considered commercial
Commercial?
accesses
Okay. We've
in
been
Wisconsin.
getting more requests for larger and larger, over 40 feet already, which is just unbelievably large in our opinion.
We have been seeing the same thing. Our past practice has been to standard, we offer 30 feet generally for farm access. We can go up to 35. I believe it's actually listed in administrative code that we cannot exceed 35. And then also Wisconsin has an implements of husbandry law, which restricts farm vehicles to 22 feet. And they have to have a pilot vehicle and, four-way lighting and things like that. I live in a rural area. I know for a fact that's not being followed in a lot of cases, but it's a law enforcement issue.
What we try to tell a property owner is that you're going to get 35 feet at the property line. By the time you add the radii, you're up to 115 feet. And that they go, really, I get 115 feet? Yeah, by the time you get everything there. Chris, what have you seen width-wise in your area?
We've allowed 35 feet wide, but we've actually had some farmers that put a 35-foot wide driveway in to standards like you said, Bob, and then they came back a year later and asked to reduce the size of it because they had people parking on their driveways and throwing garbage out and stuff. So typically if they put a 24-foot wide in properly with the proper radiuses, they have no problems turning in. The radius is really what the farmer needs to get in and out.
Reduce a driveway width. In 27 years, that's only the second time I've heard that.
Anybody else have a question for Dave?
All right, I can't answer that with any degree of accuracy.
Is there much
but
opposition to J-turns?
Yes, is there much opposition to J-turns? I did not hear of any, so my assumption is there was not. I know there's one on US Highway 53, one on 54 near Wisconsin Rapids, and I believe there's a couple on 29 near the city of Green Bay. And one of those they're looking at upgrading to an interchange now, but I've heard, I believe on 53 and certainly at 54 in Wisconsin Rapids, that there's a lot of local support for that one. There have been a lot of recognized crash issues there, and they've really seen. Do you have some experience with that one?
Highway 53 corridor.
Yes.
We installed the initial one in Douglas County. That met opposition at the start, going through the public process. However, we were able to justify it and move forward, get it installed. 6 months after installation, the locals were over the tipping point, more positive feedback just because of the lack of crashes. That carried over to the next county to the south where we installed one in Washburn County.
Okay.
That did not have much opposition because of the success in Douglas.
I
And
saw
same
the other
thing,
one.
wonderful safety results with the J-turns.
Yeah. We've had great luck with them.
All right. Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you.